Life speaks. It speaks through struggles and success, through music and messages, the preconceived and the unexpected. Whether you are in the depths of the valley or in the midst of your mountaintop experience, everyone needs to be encouraged from time to time. Here we will share stories of strength, testimonies of triumph, verses of victory, observations, and information meant to touch the heart and uplift the soul, to keep you on your path of purpose with power and authority. This is Andrea L. Hines, and I'm your host for When Life Speaks, right here on the Streaming Inspirational Broadcast Network. I am glad you accepted the invitation to join us tonight. There is something in this broadcast just for you, and if it's going to be a blessing to your life, it will surely be a blessing to someone else. So share, start a watch party, and invite someone you know to join us. Then you know what to do. Turn down the volume of life and get ready to receive, so that when life speaks, you will speak life. Welcome back, everyone. You have joined the broadcast of When Life Speaks here on the Streaming Inspirational Broadcast Network. This is Andrea L. Hines, and I am always grateful that you have chosen to take time out of your week and time out of your day to be with us on Thursday evenings. Have you had a great week so far? I sure hope you have. I hope you've been planning some things that are not all work related too. You know, we always talk about balance. So that means you have to have some be nice to me things on your agenda. Sometimes we work so hard, we don't even know how to do the just for me things. Things like ordering something from Candy Cakes, Treats, and More. You know I had to get that in. Have you ordered anything yet? Well, you need to. I put in my order for chocolate-covered strawberries. No occasion necessary. I just like them. They're delicious, and I enjoy them. Now, do you have a fun thing on your agenda to do? Maybe do something different with friends or meet some new ones. An Elegant Encounter is calling all queens to come on over to Authors and Art in Raleigh for a paint party on March 31st at 3 p.m. You can find the details on the Facebook page, An Elegant Encounter, and get all your ticket information. Now, that's an event with Audra Lynette Hines, who's my co-host from time to time, so you know it's going to be fun. Now, there's a conference in New York City on Saturday, April 6th, that those of you in that area or those traveling in that area might want to check out. It's about living your best life. Now, it is fast approaching. It's going to be April the 6th, but I want you to put the date on your calendar. Now, one of my upcoming guests will be with me to give you a peek at what you can expect there. Her name is Diane Hamilton, so just be on the lookout for that. And while you are marking dates, mark your calendar for May 18th. That's right, May 18th. When Life Speaks, we'll be celebrating our 1-year anniversary. And you want to be there. And I do say this is our anniversary because I cannot do this show without you, and I don't want to celebrate without you either. So please, as they say, get your glad rags and get ready to party. I mean, I love doing what I do, and I hope you enjoy sharing these journeys with me as well. I hope we've been helping you to speak life, not command your day. Set things in motion with anticipation and expectation. knowing every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord, that it is His intent that you live an abundant life. You matter to God, and He wants to bless you. Now, Resurrection Sunday is right around the corner, and it is one of those times that we are most mindful of the sacrifice that was made for us, for each of us. Jesus tells us in His word, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. We might have life and have it more abundantly. Now, the Message Bible, when it comes to the abundant life, says, I have more, I can have more and better. I can have more and better. And that means I can be healthy and I can be whole. I can be healthy physically, I can be healthy spiritually and mentally. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, one of those areas. I have a guest who is going to help us explore some things about mental health and mental health first aid. Her sorority and recently received the Nonprofit Award from the Capital Area section of the National Council of Negro Women. Her accomplishments are so extensive. There's just no way that I can tell you all about her and all of the things that she's done in this space and time. But I think this can sum it up. At the core of her service is self-discovery, purpose, helping people discover who they are here to be, mission, what they are here to do, and passion, the bold enthusiasm to upgrade the skill sets to do so with marked excellence. When we come back from the break, you're going to hear from Tracy McNeil. Everybody, this is Andrea L. Hines, your host for When Life Speaks, and I am here with my guest, Ms. Tracy Mack, who is a nationally certified mental health first aid instructor. Good evening, Tracy, and welcome.
Good evening, Ms. Hines. Welcome. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. You know, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while, and I want our listeners to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you just give us some of your personal bio, and listeners, you know what to do. You got to send up some hearts while Tracy's talking and let her know you love her, okay? So, Tracy, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, my name is Tracy McNeil, but I'm more affectionately known as Tracy Mack. I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, but my dad joined the Marine Corps, and we left Portsmouth back in like 1973. So for most of my life, I was raised in North Carolina, even though that consisted of me moving about 23 times. Sometimes that was around the corner, and sometimes that was internationally, because I've lived in Japan and enjoyed being married for over 25 years, and the friendship I have with my husband, Owen, and we have a soon-to-be 18-year-old daughter, Jada, and a soon-to-be college student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And she is a beautiful young lady. She is a beautiful young lady. And I know that there is so much that you do, Tracy. I don't know, when you got this certification and began training in mental health first aid, I thought, how is she going to fit one more thing on her plate? I have had the training with you, and I tell you, first of all, you do an amazing job. But sometimes people tell us, you know, we don't really know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I did, there's so much about this issue of mental health, so much surrounding it, and I wanted an opportunity for people to learn a little bit more just about mental health in general, and then why mental health first aid is so important. So fill us in a little bit, Tracy, on just what is mental health.
Well, first of all, I thank you so much for bringing up the topic and bringing the awareness to it. And I want to start with the disclaimer that I am not a mental health professional. Mental health first aid training allows me to train people, but it's a layman's course. But basically, Ms. Hines, mental health is just a wide range of conditions that can affect mood, thinking, and behavior. And one way I like to put it is a mental health disorder interrupts an extended interruption of your ability to live, love, and laugh. And sometimes that may come in depression, clinical depression, anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder. Even though dementia is not a mental health disorder, it's a brain disease, it does have psychosis attached to it with some of the signs and symptoms of mental health. So then you've got ADD, ADHD, schizophrenia, different compulsive disorders that kind of, and then, of course, in our mental health arena, you've got addictions, substance abuse, that all, kind of sum total what mental health is all about.
Now, let me ask you this because I get confused in determining what is a mental health disease, what is a disorder, and I heard you mention psychosis. How do you differentiate between those three?
Well, psychosis is a culmination of different signs and symptoms that present themselves. Just like I said, with dementia is a brain disease. It's not a mental health disorder. But because some of the signs and symptoms of dementia present themselves as if they're a mental health disease, people kind of confuse the two. So disorders and diseases, like I said, I'm not a mental health professional, so diagnosing is not my forte or my arena. But disorders and diseases, the time period that someone suffers, the severity that they suffer can determine whether or not it's a disorder or disease or even an episode. Because some people may have an anxiety attack or panic attack, and it's just an episode. It does not mean they have the disorder or the disease.
Gotcha. Now, how did you get interested in becoming a nationally certified mental health aid instructor? What made you decide to take that course?
Two reasons. First of all, my own experience with having 9/11 was the first time I ever had a panic attack, and so myself. But the thing that kind of catapulted me into it was I had an experience where I was doing a consultation as a coach and a consultant. I do consultations, and I had a consultation with a gentleman, and he expressed his desire to kill himself, to commit suicide. And I was not prepared at all as to what to do. I had never had the experience of someone saying, I think I feel like killing myself. And when someone says that they want to complete suicide, you have to take it serious every single time. So I panicked. And thank goodness I happened to be at my laptop, and I began to Google frantically to be able to get him some help, and got on a crisis hotline, and they were able to take his number and call him, and they took the call and assured me that they had it from there. But I didn't have a clue of how to assist this man.
How did you go about getting certified yourself? And before you even answer that question, Tracy, I wasn't aware of mental health first aid. Is this something that's been around for a long time, or is it just getting more prevalent in recent years?
Well, mental health first aid started in Australia in 2001, and then it later came to the United States. In North Carolina, based on the last statistics I have, we have about 60,000 people that have been trained in mental health first aid. And then we've got people who are trained. Once you get the certification to become a trainer, that is a national certification. So we've got trainers. North Carolina was number 5, then into the United States.
Okay. And do you think that, is there a rise in, I don't know quite if I'm putting this the right way, is there a rise in mental health, or a rise in the acknowledgement of mental health issues? I'll put it that way, mental health issues.
Well, first of all, I want to go back and answer one question that you asked me. How did I become aware of it? I became aware through my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, had put out about the initiative during the Obama administration to help with mental health first aid. And so I decided to partner with the sorority to offer regional mental health first aid trainings, and then I decided to become certified for my own company. But getting back to the latter question, Ms. Hines, mental health is not new. The awareness, I think, is new because things like suicide and mental health, it's real. You know, a lot of times if we think back in our lives and in our family, because 1 in 5 adults wrestle with or suffer with a mental health issue. And if we go back in the day, because I know in my family and a lot of families, people had mental health issues, but we just kept them in the back room. Or we didn't talk about it. Or we acted like nothing was wrong. And because we just allowed them to kind of get away with their behavior and force family and friends to understand.
Do you think the stigma is lessening at all? Is that reducing at all because of probably more training now than people have than they had in the past?
I think sometimes the stigma, we're demystifying it. I can't say that it's reducing because I don't have any data to support that. But I think through mental health first aid and things like that and conversation and awareness and social media, and I think we're becoming more aware and we're able to kind of demystify it and kind of decrease the stigma. But I still think there's a hold, especially culturally, in the African-American community, in the religious community, because like I said, 1 in 5 adults suffer. So if you just think about it from that perspective, if you count your friends and family members.
We recently had a guest on who is, we had the segment titled Living Life Bipolar, and just exploring the difficulties in coming forward about the disease and the lack of awareness and sometimes insensitivity to the fact that these are indeed real issues and real problems that people are dealing with every day. In the course of giving this training and allowing people to become more aware and more equipped, what do you think are some of the most important things to look for or look at when you are trying to be the best first aider you can be, for lack of a better way of putting it? Because we don't really know what that first aid entails. Can you give us just a little bit of information on that?
Absolutely. Mental health first aid, it basically teaches you how to identify and understand and respond to the signs and symptoms of mental illness or mental health crisis, and even substance use disorders. The training is an 8-hour training, and you get the skills you need to reach out and provide initial support. And if I can, mental health first aid, you have CPR for physical first aid. When someone is in a crisis, you attend to them immediately until you can get appropriate help. Well, mental health, what CPR is to the physical body, mental health first aid is to the mental health. So the mental health first aid course is going to help you support someone who may be developing a mental health issue or substance use problem and just help them get to appropriate care. You get to recognize the signs and symptoms of a mental illness, the signs and symptoms of substance abuse, how to interact with a person in crisis, and how to connect, because that's very important, because sometimes people who have mental health issues feel very alone and isolated, whether it be because of acceptance or because of the stigma. And now very recently, mental health first aid, you would learn how to administer naloxone, which is used in the event of an opioid overdose.
Now, I think there's something that you said that was very, very key, and it is in recognizing until help arrives or until you can get the person to the right professional. So many times I think when we approach different situations, we approach them from the standpoint of being able to fix them. And this is not a fix by any means. Am I right?
No, because mental health first aid, you're not going to become a mental health professional. You're not going to be able to diagnose. So it's not a counseling session or a therapy session. So, you're going to learn to recognize the signs and symptoms. One thing I really like to bring out when I do training is we've got to put a human face on someone who's suffering a mental health crisis. If someone has a baby, or if someone has a heart attack, or if someone's hospitalized because of surgery, we go see them. We try to care for them when they come home. We take food. We take cards. We send get well wishes. But when someone's suffering with a mental health crisis, we tend to disappear. And that's
Why do you think that is, Tracy?
Fear and ignorance.
Okay.
Because we don't know. Sometimes we don't have the language. Sometimes we don't. We allow television and media, like movies that portray people like Psycho and things like that. We have these assumptions on what mental health looks like or someone in crisis looks like. And most people who are suffering a mental health crisis are nonviolent to other people. But the media portrays an opposite picture. But we put this face. We have to put a face on mental health. That's why I like to constantly remind people, 1 in 5. So think about the people 1 in 5.
Wow.
Because, it's serious, but at the same time, early intervention and courses like Mental Health First Aid bring an awareness, because early intervention, it gives the hope that there's cures most times and recovery is possible.
Well, Tracy, I want you to talk about some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to mental health first aid. I'm having trouble getting it out this morning, but if you can just share with us some of the do's and don'ts that you think are really, really important. It is impossible to compress all of the information that's needed and necessary in order to be effective, particularly in these types of scenarios. But if you don't mind delving into that just a little bit, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a break and a breath right here. And listeners, you hang in there. And if you need a pen, a piece of paper, or whatever, or if you know of someone who could benefit from this information, be sure to share, start a watch party, and so that you can be able to receive the information that Tracy's about to give us. So hang in there. We will be right back. Well, welcome back, everyone. I thank you for hanging in there with us here at When Life Speaks, and we've been talking with Ms. Tracy Mack and talking about the issues of mental health and mental health first aid. And as she was saying earlier, the mental first aid training is an intense 8-hour training, and there's no way everything can be covered on this call. But I did want Tracy to just kind of give us a few pointers on the do's and don'ts when it comes to mental health first aid and comes to the issues of recognizing and intervention. And Tracy, you've got the floor. Just tell us whatever you think might be helpful for us in dealing with this problem.
Well, and again, thank you so much, Ms. Hines, for bringing this forward. In getting to the do's and don'ts, let me say something first. A lot of times people just need you to listen, because on average there are 123 suicides per day, and that's based on the numbers from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. 123 suicides every day. And most times the people are trying to escape something. And as we know statistically, a lot of those have to do with mental health issues. And then drug overdoses. And this is just the numbers I'm aware of since 2016, 630,000. And that's from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. 600,000
oh, my gosh.
between 1999 and 2016. So imagine how much it has increased since the opioid epidemic has increased, and we're in 2019. So the things is encourage someone to talk. You have to be there to listen and be present.
Yes.
Of course, I'm going to promote mental health first aid because I believe in the course. I believe in the action plan that it offers. I believe in the results. I offer the class. I teach the class. And not only do you learn the action plan of how to help someone else and recognize signs and symptoms, a lot of times people become aware of their own mental state because of things that are brought up in the class. So being very present and deciding not to remain ignorant. And ignorance is not a bad word. It just means we don't know. Because sometimes the stigma and the ability to demystify or decrease the stigma can be just as simple as becoming more literate about some of the terminology, about some things, and that all mental health issues do not result in prescribing medications. And I know a lot of people fear that because they see the movies and everything, and they may have heard true stories about some medications that may cause side effects that some people feel are worse than the disease itself. But every time it does not result in medication. There are counseling, therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies. That's just therapy that helps change the way you think and feel. So it's and professional help is readily available. Another thing I'd like to say is help people understand that even though with health insurance and all the issues of being underinsured or not insured, there are so many programs, Behavioral Health Alliance, NAMI, there's so many programs that we have access to that you can get either low-cost help or no-cost help and support. So sometimes...
And when we're looking for this help in those places that you named, give those names again, Tracy.
Behavioral Health Alliance, that's here in North Carolina. NAMI is here in North Carolina.
Okay. Now, if someone was on an early search, or let me go back and let me put it this way: we have a lot of times you would have the emergency cards, the little emergency contact cards. You know, the fire department, police department, and those kinds of things. Shouldn't these things be on those emergency cards as well?
They can be, but I think a lot of times because of ignorance, sometimes we can direct people to the wrong places.
Okay.
And that's one thing that the mental health first aid training brings out, because one of the objectives in the action plan is to encourage appropriate professional help. So if you don't know what the appropriate professional help is and you steer someone to the wrong type of help, that may be doing more harm than good. And one thing I really must give the listeners, if they're not aware of, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 1-800-273-8255 or TALK. 1-800-273-TALK, TALK, and those numbers are 8255. Because the appropriate help, if someone is experiencing trauma, and trauma for one may be different from trauma for another, but all trauma is real to that individual. Take, for instance, we had a lot of people that suffered from Hurricanes Florence and Michael. That was traumatic for some people to lose everything. Someone else may say, oh, that was fine. I just, had the opportunity to start afresh. But that may be traumatic to another person. PTSD is not just for the veteran. People have experiences, and I'm not trying to make everybody sick, but in order to find out how we can get whole, we have to address real issues. There's something now, it's not necessarily addressed in the mental health first aid training, called religious trauma syndrome.
I've heard about that. I have heard about that.
So you just have different ways that people have experienced stress on the job. People work constantly. Some people pull 12 and 14-hour days, and you cannot do that consistently for a long time without having some type of physical and mental breakdown. Doesn't mean that you have to, like I said, be on someone's couch. and that's a negative connotation. But sometimes couch talk is good. I have a therapist and a coach.
Mhm.
Like I said, I had issues with a panic attack. Started 9/11, and I had two more between 2001 and 2004. I haven't had one since 2004, and I know that's because I got early intervention. I got the appropriate professional help, and I learned the tools and supported and got the support, and I haven't had one since. So that's a testimony of early intervention.
Let me ask you something, Tracy. When you were having it, did you recognize that that's what was going on?
No, not a clue. This was 2001. I wasn't nowhere near New York. I was in Cherry Point, North Carolina, sitting outside the gate because I had gone to work and I had my baby in the car. And where I worked, I had was daycare, so I had milk and formula and Pampers and everything going to work. So I only had a half a bottle and one Pamper in the car. And when I got to work and got rerouted back home, I thought I was going back home. You know, it was less than a 10-minute ride. But I got stopped at the gate because they closed the gate. And sat out there for about 5 hours in the heat, and I only had a quarter tank of gas. So I was turning the car off and on. And then due to circumstances and no one really knowing what was happening, the MPs began to come with the dogs and getting everybody to get back in their cars. And I was running back to my car, had my baby, and just started sweating in places I'd never sweat before. My heart started beating fast. I had a cold sweat. I had shortness of breath, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I was much heavier than I am now. I was almost about 300 pounds then. So I thought I was having a heart attack. And to be honest, the symptoms of a panic attack or an anxiety attack can look very much like a heart attack. And mental health first aid allows us to know what to do and when to do when someone presents with an anxiety or a panic attack. Do we know if a coworker has one? If someone has one at a family event, do we know what to do? And that's what this training helps provide. Recognize signs and symptoms, action plan of what to do to get the person appropriate help.
And I think it is so important for all of us to get the training, because so many times things happen. When you were talking about the dramatic situations of 9/11 and hurricanes and those kinds of things, and the importance of putting a face with situations and circumstances, because we will frequently think, well, I get it. I get you having an issue with 9/11, but, you know, we're way past that now, or we're way past the hurricane now, or we're way past whatever the traumatic situation may happen to be. But the date may have passed, but the reality of it is getting over those things is not easy.
When you mentioned earlier something, a don't ever tell somebody to get over it, because if they would, they could.
Yes.
And then I've heard it said from some people that, you bringing attention to it is going to make people feel like they have it. You're giving people something to buy into. Well, here's the thing. If someone fakes a mental illness, they have a mental illness.
Right.
If you got to fake it to get attention, you're dealing with some type of deficit. So people who, it's everyday people. And people who take the course, like we just did one last week at Wake Tech for their staff, so they can better help the students that come in. And so, but people who end up taking this course are employers, hospital staff, teachers, family members, faith leaders, community leaders, caring individuals. So as human as the people are who take the course is because they realize the face of those who may be suffering. It's the person you see. It's not just the person on television that's deranged or having a terrible violent episode. It's someone that just cries, someone who can't get out of bed, someone who just doesn't have anyone to talk to and they feel lonely, someone who may be suffering from bipolar disorder. You know, a divorce can send someone into depression. We don't know what sets some people into feeling trauma, and that's why we have to take all traumas as real, and that's why it's important to demystify the stigma around mental health, because it's everyday people.
That's right.
Everyday people.
Tracy, this is some good information that you're giving us, and we're going to take another real quick break. So don't go away, anybody, because when we come back, I'm going to have Tracy tell us how you can get trained, how you can organize training if you need to, and just all of the great things that are surrounding getting you to know what you don't know. So we'll be back in just a minute. Hang in there. Thanks for hanging in, everybody. We're here with Tracy Mack, and Tracy's been helping us understand more about mental health and mental health first aid. And Tracy, I want you to give us some information in terms of how to get to a training or how to organize a training and what the parameters are around that, because I think this is such an important issue. But you mentioned something about religious trauma, and I'd like for you to just touch on that a little bit, you know, as much as we can in the time that we have, because I'm sure that could be a whole segment unto itself. But just tell us a little bit about religious trauma.
Well, let me say this, too. When I mentioned about my situation in 2001 and then 2004, now in that time frame, I didn't experience religious trauma, but I experienced religious rejection, because I chose to go outside the church to get help. And I was told I didn't believe God. I was told I didn't have enough faith. I was told I wasn't reading Scripture enough, and I wasn't coming to church enough.
Wow.
Let me tell you, Ms. Hines, I love the Lord with all my heart. I'm saved, fire baptized, filled, the whole nine, ordained in ministry. But sometimes altar call isn't enough, and a Scripture won't do. And you need, and then when we talk about healing, who are we to say how we get it? When you want to be healed, you need to take the most direct path to being healed. And so that was something for me. I won't say it was traumatic, because I was more determined to be healed than I was embarrassed to be asked to leave. But
what is it that you say, the things that happen that prevent you from that live, love, laugh pattern?
Yes.
There's an issue.
Yes.
That needs to be addressed.
And so when the religious trauma that some people experience, especially if there's been cultish behavior and activities, that can scar people. There was a student that I had in one of my trainings who she became suicidal after she left a cultist situation. A lot of bondage and rules and regulations can cause people to just be, tied up and intertwined internally, and because their spiritual path is where they go for help, if they've experienced trauma in that setting, they can no longer go to that particular place for help. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Are many churches hosting this training?
We've had a few, and I will say that myself as an ordained in ministry, and one of my, from time to time I get to co-facilitate, one of my co-facilitators, Pam Johnson. She's a pastor here in Raleigh. So we're really trying to get it in churches. Because I know a few through my coaching and working alongside counselors and therapists. I have a few pastors who deal with mental health issues, and it's real because it doesn't discriminate.
Right.
Trauma doesn't discriminate, and nor does mental health issues, mental health episodes or crisis. It's it can happen to any and everybody.
So tell me how we can get this training. What do we need to have? What are the parameters around it? How can we get set up?
Well, one good thing is just about everywhere. And like I said, with my type of certification, I can teach it and train anywhere. It's in just all 50 states. And but I'm here locally in Raleigh. We've got one coming up. I've got one coming up on the 22nd of March. And if people want to, it is an 8-hour training, and you have to stay for the duration of the training. You can't come and then go. There are some instructors that split it in 2 different days. They do 4 hours and 4 hours. But from my experience, people, because if you don't teach it well, it can be a heavy topic, and people can be reluctant to return. But some people who can't handle the 8 hours, if they prefer 4 and 4, those trainings are there. But if the training I have coming up on March 22nd, you can find out more on my website, lifecoachtracymack.com, under schedule. And there is March 22nd, there's a link there. That'll be here in Raleigh. If you can't get with that one, you can go to mentalhealthfirstaid.com, and there is a search where you can search your city and choose whichever mile radius that you're willing to travel, and a training, and populate the trainings that way too.
Okay, great. Tracy, I can't believe it, but, this is sometimes the fastest time ever because there's so much that can be covered in this topic, and I guess that's why you have the excellent training that you do have. But let me ask you this as we're getting ready to wrap up here. What would you, of the things that we talked about and touched on today, and again, it was just impossible to go into depth about it, but you did give us some great nuggets. But what are the things that you would like for people to remember when it comes to mental health and mental health first aid?
1 in 5 adults is suffering. That's just what's diagnosed. That is just what's diagnosed. So imagine what has not been diagnosed. So 1 in 5 are suffering. Just remember the human face. It could be your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your pastor, your teacher, your doctor, your lawyer, your accountant. Let's put the human face on mental health, and it's not the horror flick that comes on television. These are real people that have had real situations to happen in their real lives, and there is real help available. And mental health first aid is one of the ways that I have found to be effective, to be present with the help, to demystify and reduce the stigma around mental health, to increase the literacy and the education, to be able to give people appropriate help so early intervention can give them the hope for cure or recovery.
The hope for cure or recovery. Tracy Mack, thank you so very much. And listeners, I'm going to have the information and the links up again before we close. But I tell you what, the human face, you never know. Everybody has a story. We say it here on When Life Speaks all the time. But when life speaks, you can speak life, and you may have to speak it through or with the aid of mental health first aid. Thank you, Tracy Mack. We enjoyed having you. I hope you will come back and see us again, because there's some wonderful initiatives that you are part of as well, and we're not going to get into all of it today, but it has to do with making sure that the homeless get homes. What's the name of the organization?
Families Together.
Families Together. She may not come back and talk about it, but I'm going to sure talk about it for her.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with your audience. And I love what you do.
God, thank you, Tracy Mack. And you guys hang in. We're going to wrap up in just a few minutes. Hold on. Our sincere thanks to Tracy Mack for being with us this evening. We didn't get to everything, but I tell you what she shared with us was powerful, and she gave us a lot of valuable information. And I hope you will contact her to set up a training or to attend a training. Just like everybody needs to have CPR, it's helpful to you. Everybody needs to be exposed to and trained in mental health first aid. If you need further information about events, happenings, testimonials, send in your prayer requests. Be sure to contact me at speaklifewithandrea@gmail.com, and we will do everything in our power to get you what you need. Remember these dates: March 31st, Queen's Paint Party at Office and Art, April 6th, Conference in New York City, and of course, the May 18th celebration. Until next week, everyone, remember, when life speaks, you speak life. Good night, everybody.
When Life Speaks was produced by Film Studios for the SIBN Network.